Understanding physics. I'm going to do some videos on the AQA practical assessments, and this video is an overview talking about what they are and how you're actually going to do them. Okay. Now bear in mind, for AQA and for OCR it's different. This is for AQA. This is how AQA want to do it. So an overview of the practical assessments. Now, over the course of your studies, you will carry out 12 practical assessments. It's nothing to worry about. They are experiments that you should do anyway. Hopefully, you'll do a lot more than 12 in 2 years. But this is to make sure that you do some very important experiments that they feel every physics student should do. In a way, it's also to force schools to actually do some practical work with their students. I find it a little bit shocking how some schools, how little practical work the students actually do. And this is a way of twisting the arm of the school to actually do some proper practical work. Obviously, most schools do it, but you know, moving on. Now, you will not be tested on stuff that you've not had a chance to practice. Your teacher will explain it to you exactly what you have to do, and you won't be have to, let's say, use something that you've never used before or that hasn't been demonstrated to you. So don't worry about that. You'll have a chance to ask questions, you know, if, excuse me, sir or miss, could you show me how to use this? No problem, you do this, fine. And you won't be marked down for asking questions, okay? You should always, if you haven't got a clue, then ask your teacher. You'll be set a task, and you'll carry out the experiment under supervision. The teacher will be in the room, basically. And then you'll write it up, and you'll be given a deadline for it to be handed in. Okay, you'll write a report for each of them. You'll write a report. Now, a lot of teachers use lab books, so the books, particularly for lab work, and every other page is kind of graph paper kind of stuff. I actually used to do it, get my students to do it on paper, and then would keep it all in a folder. Like with an index at the front. However, but you're going to hand in reports, okay? Not email them, you're going to hand them in, and your teacher will keep them safe. They'll look after your lab books for you. Now, if you fail to complete the tasks, it's very, very important, because the exam board, they actually send moderators round to the schools, and they chat with the teacher and they ask to see the students' work. What they actually do usually is 1 year they'll do physics, 1 year they'll do chemistry, 1 year they'll do biology. So let's say for physics, it's 1 every 3 years that you'll get a moderator from the exam board will come to the school, and they'll spend like the whole morning, like, you know, maybe 3 hours talking to the teacher, looking at the teacher's planning, looking at the students' work. They'll probably observe a practical assessment taking place. They'll talk to the students. They'll check that they do it properly. If everything's okay, then that's it. If there are problems, what they may then do is say, very soon after, they will do physics, chemistry, and biology. Yes, so you should just basically assume that you do it properly and you'll be okay. Okay. Now, if you fail to complete these tasks, this is very important. There comes a time of the year around March, April, where your teacher fills in a form. Yeah, I think it's about the middle of April, actually, April the 15th. Your teacher fills in the form, list of all your names. Has this student completed all the practical assessments, yes or no? And if they write no, that's on your exam certificate. And if you've got an offer from university, the offer assumes that you have passed your practical assessments. And if you haven't, you may not actually get into university. It is very, very important. Okay, you've got to take these seriously. In terms of what you have to do, it shouldn't be that much of a big deal, but it is important that you do it. Now, there are 12 over 2 years, and these are the practical assessments that you have to do at AQA. I'm actually going to make a video on each of these. So, you know, maybe if you're doing one of them, check out my video, bit of background information. You will get questions in the exam papers on various things. Make sure you are familiar with each of these experiments before your final exams. But these are the 12 ones that you have to do. Okay, finding a value of G, finding a value for the Young's modulus of a material. The exam board actually produces, AQA produces sheets that the students can give to the students as instructions for each of these, or your teacher may write his or her own instruction sheet. It's up to them. It's actually quite flexible, but just make sure you do each of these. Now, what are these letters on the right hand side? Well, they're quite important. They are the apparatus and techniques that you're going to be basically have to cover. Okay, you will have to demonstrate your competency with each of these skills and techniques. Now, for each of the experiments, there's maybe 3 or 4 of them that it will cover. Yes, for many, you'll have several opportunities to do so. For some of them, you may only have one. For example, if you look at this, so linking it together, these are on the left hand side, we've got the different experiments, and on the right hand side, we've got the different techniques, etc. And you'll notice, for example, for the resistivity of a wire one there, you have to, in that experiment, do A, B, E, and F. So use of particular instruments, etc., like voltmeters and ammeters, use of digital instruments like multimeters, etc., 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 etc. Okay, for some of them, like the inverse square law for gamma radiation, then you will only have one opportunity there, which is there. But for most of them, if you look, like the letter A appears on nearly all of them. And that's just basically using physics apparatus and taking readings and recording readings. Okay, so those are the tasks, those are the skills. Your teacher will basically, if you've just done the resistivity, they will check that you've demonstrated A, B, E, and F, and they will tick that off on a spreadsheet. And they will keep this spreadsheet for all of the activities for all of their students. And that's one of the things that the moderator will look at. Some questions. How will I know what I'm supposed to do? I haven't got a clue about this stuff. Well, your teacher will give you a briefing sheet, and it will say, do this, do this, do this. This is what you have to hand in. Okay. And they will talk you through it. And if you've got any questions, ask your teacher. Yes. And they shouldn't be asking you to do something that you haven't actually done before in terms of using equipment, or that they haven't demonstrated to you before. So don't panic. They'll give you a briefing sheet, either one that's from the exam board or one they've written themselves. Will you work in groups? Well, probably. You know, if you've got a class of 20 students, then it'll probably be, 5 or 6 groups of 3 or 4 students. However, this is important. Your report, including your tables and your graphs and your analysis, must be your own work. You do not, this is very, very important. Listen to this. You do not have like somebody in the group does a fantastic graph on Excel and then emails it to their mates, and they all hand in the same graph. Because guess what's going to happen? If you do that, the teacher will rip it up and tell everybody, right, do it again. This is unacceptable, do it again. Okay? You're in a group to gather information, to take readings, to work together on the actual practical task. After that, everything has to be your own work. And if it isn't, and your teacher turns a blind eye to it, then, you know, when that moderator comes in and notices it, you know, it could be a bit of bother. Yes. But yes, you probably will work in groups. Should I do my write-up on the computer? I reckon it makes sense to do so. If you're using a lab book, then you can't really do that. But as I said, this is one of the reasons I get my students to do it on paper, as in to do it on Word and do their tables on Excel. Some graphs you can do on Excel, although to do a decent graph on Excel takes a bit of practice. So some graphs actually should be done by hand. Moderators have asked me in the past, they want to see some graphs done by hand just to show that students can actually plot graphs on graph paper. But should you do it on a computer, I think it makes sense to do so. And then you can check for spelling errors and you can add bits to it, etc., etc. What happens if I miss an assessment due to illness? Well, your teacher should give you another chance to catch up. Whether it's maybe having an extra catch-up practical session or getting the practical work done on a dinner time or whatever. If you have a genuine excuse, you should have a chance to catch up with the practical work, write it up in your own time before the deadline. Okay, if you are ill, by the way, make sure your teachers know that you're ill. Yes. So that is it. That's an overview of the practical assessment. Welcome your comments as always. And as I said, for each of them, I'm going to do a video and talk about some of the important points.